I think if I unhook the spring here, I can lift out this cocking lever arrangement and hopefully clean it. Yeah, that's the spring unhooked. Take it right at the end of its travel. I think it'll lift off its posts. It does. That's my lever out. And it means I can clean that lever and also lubricate it lightly with some probably molybdenum paste or grease. It's got quite broad friction surfaces there. There's no need for that to be rough. That's for cocking the shutter, that lever. And if I lift my flash contact wire out of the way a bit, I can get to the track and check that that's clean where that piece runs. This other lever here is the shutter release. That's held in with a spring. I'll see if that unhooks. It does. Can I lift that lever out now? No, because of the shape of it, I can't lift the lever out, but I can get underneath it to clean a bit more readily, so I'll do that. That's good. Right, so bit of molybdenum paste here. I'm just going to give it a very light wipe underneath that under surface of that ring and hook its spring back into position. And the other component here I'll do similarly. Wipe some molybdenum paste on the track that the locating pins run through and a light wipe on the under surface. And put that into position. There's its spring, where's the post that hooks to? There. Okay, so the spring comes around the back. Making sure I know where everything connects. That's good. And its spring hooks over that post. That's good. Well, that front panel was pretty much ready to have the shutter put back into it. Why is that not closing? I got that on the wrong side. I probably have. Yes, I've just got that lever on the wrong side, so I'll just unhook that spring and get this lever correctly positioned. That's better. Get my spring back in place. Oh, did it drop out again? It did. That's better. That's how it should all be. I'm going to have a very close look at these bellows with a torch to make sure there are no other light leaks that I'm currently unaware of that I should deal with at this point before I reassemble things. That all looks good. I'm going to put the shutter back in here now. Shims went on the back. Now our flash contact, I'll need to deal with that next. So here's our flash contact. That's going to go on the shutter like that. Which way? Or like that. Like that. So I need to connect it up to its contact here. Of course all this falls to 100 pieces as soon as I unscrew that. Let's hold that together. Oops. Of course I'm already using my best tweezers to hold the other part, so I'll fight with this screw. That wasn't exactly successful. Gets me halfway there. That looks okay. Now hooking that up to the shutter. I would be happier if that piece was on there the other way up, I think. Let's have a look at this plate, shape of it. Now it is fairly uniform. I'm going to put this little hook shaped contact, I'm going to flip that 180 degrees. Well, I can achieve the same thing moving the wire, I suppose. and get my two screws in position. Where are they? Here they are. And the first thing to do will be to check to see if the flash actually fires. Get the contacts where I expect it to be. And the shutter is going to sit in there. Get my shims in place. The shutter fits down in there. That's our cocking action, and that's our release. Let's see if it'll go if I get the retaining ring in position. The retaining ring runs on nicely now, no fights at all. That seems to be good, that action appears to be good. Flash test. Try this flash. Not a sausage. Alright, hang on. That went at an odd time, so the flash is not correct. Something odd with my flash contact here, and I'm going to have to open up that shutter and find out what it is. It may just be the poor installation on the wire on the outside. I'll drop that shutter back out and check that. There was a problem with the flash inside the contact inside the shutter, and basically it wasn't making contact. So there was no tension on the contact there to actually hit the post. But I noticed that the timing is off. That the contact makes now when the shutter is only just starting to open. Now that would work fine for bulb flash, particularly at lower shutter speeds. But it'd be no good for electronic flash. For electronic flash, you really want the blades, the contact to be made when the blades are pretty much fully open at that point. So this arm here needs to be bent slightly in order to delay that opening. I'll see if I can get that right. Of course, I don't know that anyone will ever be using this camera with a flash, but best to make allowances for everything. That's certainly getting there. I want a bit more than that. Yeah, that's more like it. That should do nicely.
So I'll reassemble this and test the flash again.
Well, considerable time was spent getting that flash right. I had a couple of problems there. One was simply the adjustment of the contact inside the shutter so that it made at both sides of the action, if you like, when the shutter was fully closed and fully open. But the second problem, the one that almost stumped me, was every time I went to cock the shutter, the flash would fire. And what it turned out to be was that the clearance here between the head of the screw on the flash contact and the case is too small. And basically the head of the screw just stuck up, contacted the case, so that when it was at rest it was fine, but as soon as I put the pressure on here to cock the shutter, it moved things just enough that it made contact. So how did I overcome that? Well, I used a countersunk head screw, a very small countersunk head screw instead of that rounded head, and countersunk the tab, the solder tab, so that the head of the screw is now down much lower than it previously would have been. But the main thing is, that's all go. The shutter here is all back in place, all screwed back in place, and it's just waiting to have the lenses cleaned and put back in. Well, I'll clean these lenses and put them back in place on the shutter. The glass looks very, very clean. But certainly in the case of the front lens component, that had been quite loose on the shutter when I started, so it's every likelihood there that somebody had had that off in recent times to clean it. But regardless of that, it looks fine. I'll put that in place. Screw that up tight. You only need to use your fingers to tighten up something like that. There's no advantage in using a friction tool or anything else to do that. That was quite easily done with the hand, just with your fingers. That looks fine. And we even have a lens cap for that, don't we? Just brush the dust out of that and give that a quick clean. Not much coming off there. Certainly nice to have the original lens cap for a camera like this. Lens caps are usually the first thing to get lost. Right, that's the front. Now the back. Doing the inside surface first. With this inside surface, the glass is flat or so close to it that it's easy to judge from reflections whether you've got it clean or not. Let's get this to start. Seems to be a bit reluctant. Now it's going to go in. No, it's not starting.
We'll have to work on that.
Well, that lens was a bit tight all the way in going in, but it did go in. It never loosened up anywhere in the travel. And again, I'm only finger tightening that lens. It doesn't need any more than that. That was odd. It's certainly true that there was not much lead-in on the thread. It was quite square at the front. There was no bevel on the front to help lead that lens in. This glass is very clean. And being a Takuma lens, I expect it's quite sharp too. Right, well there's the front part of my camera really ready to go back. I did notice there's a tiny flap of leather here lifting. I'll glue that back down now before it has a chance to get caught on something and disappear. Now it's obviously been sticking up for a long time because it doesn't want to fold back down. That's better. Right, this back into the camera body, I think. What I need to do here is just make sure that all the dust and so forth is cleaned out of this recess. And to tell the truth, there's not much in evidence. Well, that's our rangefinder coupling there. See, as I turn the knob here, this part roller tracks the curve here. This is our shutter release on here. Quite interesting the way that's been put together. That's a plate screwed onto that shaft and you can see the screw heads have been ground away. Interesting. That must act on this arm, which is our shutter release. It looks like that can be rolled back into place. Now this was tight in the body. See if I can get that seated back in there. Looks okay. I'll get its screws in place. Alright, we have 4 screws. I'm just checking to see if they're all the same length. They appear to be so. I'll run them in, see how we get on. Alright, all 4 screws are in. Let's tighten them up. That screwdriver might be a bit wide. Alright, that looks good. Now there are 2 collars that went in at over the screw positions at the top on both sides. And these will probably be awkward to get in place, I would say, because they weren't particularly easy to remove. And of course, removing them, all I had to do was shake them out of the camera once I had unscrewed them. Oh yes, these will be fun. Are they steel or are they brass? Because if they're steel, they'll stick on a magnetised screwdriver. They're brass. Oh, that's a shame. What's the angle of attack like here? That's pretty good. Well, I will see if I can get one of these things sitting on the top of the screw. There's one now. No, this is one of those tasks that's going to take 3 hands and bright lights and a lot of swearing, I'd say. I will bring you back once I've achieved it. Well, I'm halfway there getting those collars in. Now the secret of success was this. I had to back out these screws until they were just above the surface on the inside here, which means it was possible to get this collar to sit on the screw without too much trouble, which meant that I could then get a screwdriver onto it, get it started on the thread, and then I could run my screw back in from the back of the camera and get my collar tightened up on the inside.
So it was possible, it's just the order of events that was the important factor there.